Okay, so I apologize in advance. These may not be the best set of videos here, but I wanted to try and go over this a little bit more than just the words on the page for you. So I'm going to try to elaborate a little bit, nothing fancy, but bear with me. So we've already talked a lot about annotating the text, and when we do that, we basically just read closely. We make comments, we ask questions, and we notice things as we read. The next step would be something we kind of say attacking the text. And what that means is to really critically review the text. So this particular technique is called with the grain, against the grain. And what we do is we start off on the right-hand side of the page, and we call that with the grain. And you're just going to record your understanding as you read. What I mean by that would be making quick summaries or paraphrases, noting key points, clarifying ideas, and basically as you read, sort of making meaning and keeping track of the writer's argument. Then you're going to read it for a second time, and on the left-hand side, and this is where we do the against the grain read, is we think of questions, we kind of play devil's advocate, we make some other inferences, we maybe even disagree, we find holes in their argument, we wonder if their sources are credible, and anything else. So think this idea kind of comes from like when you have like a fabric, or even if you're cutting a piece of meat, we talk about cutting things with the grain or against the grain. So with the grain, we're going to go along with it, and we're just going to understand it and kind of agree with it, or we've often call it kind of play the believing game. Everything this author says is true, and just comprehend it. On the left-hand side, we're going to go against the grain, and we're going to question it, and we're going to maybe tie it to other things and kind of play devil's advocate a little bit. So take a look here at this example. Now here's a text that is put out by the Vegan Concept, and it is an author here, or sorry, it's called The Vegan Concept. It's in an article or a publication called The Vegan Views. And this particular part here, as you can see, it starts off, it says, the whole system of the dairy industry is unnatural and abhorrent. Dairy milk is based on a principle of cruelty and inhumane practice. Within a few days of birth, the majority of calves are sold through auctions or dealers, and a few are slaughtered almost immediately. So we can tell here that this person is clearly not a fan of the dairy industry, talking about dairy milk. And so what we're going to do on the right-hand side is we're going to go with the grain. So our job is simply just to clarify, to understand the argument. So on the right-hand side here, I would have written something like, the writer believes the dairy industry is bad because it's not natural and it's not humane. Okay, that kind of summarizes their opening ideas. Further down here, I write, calves are treated badly because this person basically says within a few days of birth, they're sold in auctions, they're slaughtered immediately, and so that is what we take from that. As we continue to read, it says constant births are brought on by artificial insemination, and higher milk yields for profit are induced. All are forms of systematic exploitation without regard to the pain, anguish, and distrust of the animals. All this in order all this in order that so-called civilized man may have, or steal would be a better word, the milk, which unquestionably was meant for the calf and no other species. So again, going along with this reader, or this writer, we might say something here that it's unnatural because of all the hormones and the methods that they're using. So the way that they're producing so many births in the calves is not a natural thing to be doing. That the system does not care about the animals because it's causing pain and anguish and things like that. And finally, that humans are not meant to be drinking the cow milk. The cow has milk for its calf and not for us. So we're going to go with everything that author says, and here on the right, we are just keeping track of their argument in our own words. Now we're going to go to the left-hand side. Now it doesn't matter on that right side if you agree with any of that or not. It's not for us to bring in our opinion just yet. You are simply just clarifying the ideas that are being presented. Now on the left-hand side, this is where we get to react to it. So my first thought here says, is it unnatural if humans have been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years? So we've been having milk come from dairies for far longer than I've been around, as it says here, you know, for hundreds of years. So at some point, it's a natural thing that we do. And that was kind of that devil's advocate kind of a question. Is it not natural now to be doing this? Another question says, aren't most of these calves going to live for a while until being used for beef? So this part of the article said that these calves are basically then sold and eventually slaughtered. And the question here is, well, a lot of times we raise calves, which then become cows, and we slaughter them for beef. So we're not really doing something that we wouldn't already have been doing with them to begin with. And here's the question there is it so bad if we're going to raise all these cows, why not take their milk before we slaughter them? Not saying that's a nice thought, but there we have it. Further down, when we're talking about the pain caused on the calves, it says we are to infer that all dairy farmers are cruel and indifferent to the animals. Now, here's the part where, you know, I kind of agree. I don't think animals should be treated badly, and I don't think that they should, you know, be put through horrible things just so that, you know, we have a nice gallon of milk in the fridge. And one thing we're saying here is you're right. Maybe some people do that, but this person kind of has the idea that all farmers treat their animals horribly. So on the left here, I'm sort of questioning that. Can you really say all farmers do this and that all animals are treated badly and cruel? And there's a thought to consider. So I would consider or continue through this whole article doing the same thing. And you can either sort of go one read all the way through and do all of the with the grain so that you can understand their ideas. But of course, if something pops out, add it to the left and then go through and do the left hand against the grain. Or if you feel comfortable, you can do them at the same time, kind of side by side as you're reading. Whatever you feel most comfortable with. Most people tend to do the first read is understanding it on the right with the grain and then kind of questioning it. And one thing that you're going to start doing is you are also going to be thinking about the credibility or the ethos of the writer or of the things they're saying. One thing to consider here is that if this is in the Vegan Views publication, definitely this writer is slanted on being a vegan, and so you have to consider that that's where they're coming from, and so we have to wonder if they're able to be objective in writing such an article. Another thing is you'll definitely notice some of the loaded words talking about cruelty and inhumane, unnatural, the pain and the anguish, and we should be calling it steal rather than acquire the milk. And so words like that kind of play with our emotions a little bit. And again, we'll talk about pathos, and you'll think of how they have an emotional appeal, which is also one of your vocab words. And then the other thing is the logic, the logos, and you're going to be wondering, is this a logical argument? And when you put it all together, can we trust this source with their credibility? Is it so loaded and insulting that it's hard to really make sense of what they're saying? Does it sway you one way or the other? And so those are things to consider as well, and you can comment on those things when you're reading against the grain. Like, I'm noticing I'm being swayed, but how can I not when they're throwing out words like this? So do your best with the article and try to kind of understand it on one side and question it, play devil's advocate, notice maybe some of those techniques that the author's using to try to get you on their side. And good luck with that.